Wow, that's, well, terrifying, Emily replied. But you must be much better at fighting than I thought. Here I was thinking you were some sort of tech nerd. I honestly thought you were going to be weak. But you must be pretty strong to have survived that many matches. Able to handle yourself in a fight. I stopped briefly, looking upward towards the sky, as I thought it over for a moment. I don't really know. Is that good? 22 matches, I mean. Do you have anything I can compare it to? Maybe figure out if I'm good at fighting or not? Trust me, you're good at fighting, Barry replied. If you weren't, you'd probably be dead. I've heard of what goes on in those matches, and most people don't last more than 4, maybe 5. To have survived 22 matches, trust me, you can fight. Okay. I guess I'll take your word for it, I replied as I turned back around and continued my walk, heading for my place. So, you've got no memory before about 6 months ago. You don't remember your parents or where you came from. I'm surprised that you even remembered that your name is Jax, Barry said as he scratched his chin a little bit, thinking about it. Well, actually, that's not something that I remembered, I replied, still walking forward without turning around. To tell the truth, when the squadron of people showed up and killed everyone except the slaves, they played a game with us, a game of chance, and the card that I drew saved me and all the other slaves. It was a high card draw, what he called it, of course. I still am not too familiar with it. I haven't exactly had time for games of chance, or to look into them. But he drew a 10, and I drew a jack. He said that jacks were my lucky card. And being as I had just gained my freedom and didn't have a name, I supposed it was only proper to give myself one. So I chose my lucky card, jacks. I think it fits, right? I said, turning around and smiling back at them. Emily and Barry had a look of confusion and befuddlement, as if they could barely believe what they just heard. Yeah, I guess it's as good a name as any, Emily replied, still uncertain as to how to even respond to that. But it wasn't long before we made our way back to my place. As I led them in the front door, it was fairly dark. I put the box of goods down in front of me and walked to the side of the wall, flipping a switch that I had set there. And as I did, the room sprang to life. All of the various lights began to turn on, and the gadgetries that I had set about coming into full view, many of them turning on and becoming functional. There, scattered about the room, they could see a myriad of devices strewn across the floor, with different areas seeming as if they were set up for different parts of the process of making gadgets. Some with magnifying glasses and things like that affixed to them. Others attached with lots of wires and hooked up to power generators. AC units and the power generators that powered the room in the corner. Wires running between them. I had collected a large set of fabric cloths and mats that I had laid down to create a bed in one of the far corners. And other than that, there were simply dozens upon dozens of different types of gadgets. Some filling boxes, others hanging on walls, and some in the midst of being constructed. Whoa, Barry said as he entered the room. This is awesome! I didn't think you were set up this well. Where did you get all these generators? He said as he stared at the 4 generators that I had, powering everything in my place. Oh, I made them. I made basically everything here. Really? I mean, I knew you were good at making gadgets and stuff. But you can actually make generators? Yeah, the basic science behind it is pretty clear. It's not hard once you know what you're doing. Yeah, he replied, but how exactly do you know what you're doing? I mean, I don't understand how a generator works. How do you? For a moment, I scratched my head. I don't know. Honestly, I guess it must be something that I knew before I lost my memory, in the time that I just can't remember. I suppose my family must have been engineers or something like that. It might make some sort of sense. But I've asked around and there are no families of engineers. At least none that seem to be missing children or that have disappeared themselves, at least in this segment of this yellow district. And this is the closest area to where I was. So, no luck as to finding where I came from. So you're telling me that you built all of this? In just the few months you've been here? Emily said as she looked around the room wide-eyed. I mean, this is incredible. I've never seen so many electronics in one place. All of it looks like it was built from scrap, but it also has sort of an artistic feel to it. Artistic? I replied, turning around and looking at her curiously. What do you mean? Well, your gadgets function, sure enough, and that's what most people are worried about. But there's also a certain level of craftsmanship to what you're doing. Despite the fact that you make it all out of scrap parts, everything seems to have sort of a smooth finish once it's all done. It's very refined. The metal looks clean, like you melted down the steel. Well, that's because I did. That's what that box over there in the corner is for. It's a furnace. It melts down the metal so that I can cast it. I mean, seriously, Jax, Emily replied. All of this stuff looks way too advanced. Most of the stuff that you find out here is all worn and haggard. Nobody puts that much effort into making something, well, finished like you do. Really? Well, why not? It only seems reasonable that the quality of the merchandise you produce affects its eventual sale price. If you give a half-assed effort, you get a half-assed value. It's just good business. Why should there be something strange about it? Yeah, I guess you're right, Emily said, still waltzing around, looking from place to place, eventually finding her way to one of the largest segments of the room that I was in, one that I had specifically made for toys, that I had been selling for a good deal of profit to local individuals, mostly music boxes. As she pressed one of the buttons and a song began to play, something lilting. I had no idea what the song was. I only knew that I remembered it. It sounded beautiful enough, but for the life of me, I couldn't put a name to it. I in fact remembered a great deal of music. I don't know why, but the songs always came to mind. So I began to incorporate them into the music boxes that I produced, which all sold very well. People seemed to like them. And there Emily stood for a moment, just listening to the music playing, as I began to sort through the box of goods that they gave me, separating the electronics out into the areas where I would take them apart in order to get what I needed out of them. Barry seemed to be wandering a bit more randomly, eventually finding his way to the weapons section, where most of the gadgets that they bought from me came from. Whoa, this is a lot of stuff. You've been shortchanging us. Some of this stuff looks way more impressive than the stuff you're giving us. Yeah, those are for far more dangerous things than going on a little stealing quest. Most of that stuff is actually already sold. So you can build just ordinary weapons, Barry said as he turned around looking in my direction. Yeah, I said, replying as I walked over, beginning to point at a few different weapons that I had sitting on the ground. There was a rifle, a pistol, and 2 energy weapons. The 2 energy weapons are ones that I've built myself, but the rifle and the pistol are actually repair jobs. All 4 are already sold. The repair jobs are obviously already belong to someone. And the 2 energy weapons, I've already agreed to sell to some nearby merchants for self-protection and whatnot. It's a dangerous world out there.